Hello. In this video, I will discuss the grammar presented in Chapter 1 of Wheelock's Latin. We start with verbs. Wheelock lists the 5 attributes of Latin and English verbs. You only really need to worry about 2 of those attributes right now. So just because he's throwing all of those at you at once shouldn't be cause for alarm. You only need a couple of those right now. The first attribute is called person. That is, who is doing the verb determines the form that the verb takes. Thus you say something like, I am, and not, oh, I don't know, I is. That's incorrect, right? That's bad English to say I is instead of I am. The form that the verb takes is determined by the subject, that. That's why this form of the verb does not match with that subject. So you say I am, you are, not you is, or he goes, not he go, or we go, not we goes. The form of the verb, let me say it again, the form of the verb is determined by that, the subject. Now, there are 3 persons, which in a sense we've already seen. The first person is I or we. The second is you or y'all, that is singular or plural. And then there's the third person, he, she, it, they, or a name. Then there's number. So this is person. Then there's number. Number comes down to singular and plural. Now, other languages have different numbers, like singular, dual, and plural. But in Latin, just like in English, we only have singular and plural. And like we just saw, that's the difference between I in singular and we, plural. You, singular. Y'all, we don't really have officially a second person plural in English, or the second person plural in English is actually still you, but we'll say y'all just to be clear here. And then, of course, she would be a singular third person, and they would be a plural third person. A third person could also be maybe Marcus, a he, but a name. A they would be maybe Marcus and Andreas. Well, that's not a great Latin name. Maybe that could be a Latin name. Marcus and Andreas, as long as there's more than one, plural. Now, Wheelock also talks about tense, which is time. Right now, we'll be dealing with just the present tense, but of course there are other tenses, for instance, the future tense and others. Mood is the 4th attribute. There are 3 moods. In the first chapter, we deal with 2 of them. One is indicative. That's when you say something factual. Then there is the imperative, which commands. Then there's the subjunctive that comes much later in the book. But opposed to the indicative, this is the difference between I am a rich man and if I were a rich man. We don't need to worry about that right now, but we do need to know, or we will be learning the indicative and the imperative. Those are fairly simple right now. Then there's voice. Active and passive, that's the difference between I write the book and the book is written by me. Again, this comes much later in the book. Don't worry too much about it right now. But we will learn in this chapter to conjugate verbs in the present tense and in the indicative mood. And the verbs we have are laudare and monere. Laudare, to praise. This is the infinitive form here, to praise. And here, to advise. Now a note. In this first presentation, I'm going to be including all the macrons here, like this long E and this long A here with this A, the macron over the A and the E. I won't always do that because I'm lazy, but in this first presentation I am, just to be quite uniform with it. So how do you conjugate these to be present indicative? Well, it's similar to English, but a little more complicated. In English, you would say, I praise, you praise, but he praises. We praise and they praise. Latin works with these differences, like between I praise and he praises, but in Latin, each person and each number has a different ending instead of just one. So, if we start with the infinitive, and again, that's this, laudare and monere, then this is what you do. You knock off the ending, so you get lauda. You knock off that ending, you have lauda, and then you add the personal endings. Now, I had to start off with an exception, but the first thing you do with lauda is you add the O in the personal ending if you look at the book. So the first thing you get is actually laudo. That's a long O, and that kind of consumes or assimilates the A in that root. So the first person is I praise, laudo. Then, let's go back to that root again. Lauda. If you want the second person, you praise, laudas. If you want the third person, he, she, or it praises, you just get lauda and then laudat. If you want the first person plural, you just get, again, lauda again, and laudamus, we praise. If you want the second person plural, you get this again, lauda, and then y'all praise, laudatis. And finally, they praise, the third person plural, lauda, again, you just get this root, add nt, laudant, they praise. So you can see this is all quite regular. Lauda plus s, t, mus, tis, and ent. So laudant, laudas, laudamus, laudat, laudas. And the only exception is actually the first one, I praise, laudo. Same basic principle works here with monere, but it's a little bit different. That's why this is the first conjugation, a first conjugation verb, and you'll notice in the vocabulary that a lot of the verbs given look a lot like laudare, amare, and so forth. Other ones look a lot like monere, that is, they have the e here in the infinitive form. Well, like debio and so forth. We'll get to those. But so how do you conjugate these second conjugation verbs? Almost the same way as you do with the first conjugation. You take the root, you knock off that infinitive ending, and what do? You add o. But in this case, the first person is still a tiny bit irregular, but not as irregular as that there. It's just moneo. This o comes in, this long o comes, and it doesn't quite totally assimilate that e, but it makes it shorter, and so the o is long, not the e now. So moneo. And then you do this, but then you just go down and everything's quite regular now. So you have our root, mone, and you just add the s for you praise, second person singular. Then you have monet. Oh, and I think I just noticed a small error on my part here. I accidentally included the macron here. That is, that's a short a, laudat. Not here it's laudas, here it's laudat. And it's the same thing here. Here it's mones, here it's monet. That is, he, she, or it advises. Then for the first person plural, that is we, you get your root again, plus the ending, mus, monemus. Monetis, that is, you all advise. And finally, monent. Oh, and I can't believe it. I did the same thing here again. I started just writing the root, and then I forgot to shorten it. It's laudant. Laudatis, laudant. Monetis, monent. Now you might be wondering, where are the personal pronouns? I'm calling this they advise or they praise. Well, where's the they? Well, the they is right here. The y'all is right here. The we is right here, and so on. That is, in Latin, you don't need the personal pronouns per se. Latin does have personal pronouns like ego, I. You might have ego laudo or ego moneo, but it's not necessary because it's first person singular because of that o, You could have two mones if you wanted to, but you don't need it. It's not necessary because you have that s, and oh, that's second person singular, you. And the same goes for all the others. Monet might be he advises, but you don't need a name there, though you might have a name here, like Cicero, monet. Cicero advises, or Cicero praises. Now, for the imperative. Again, you start off with the infinitive forms of the verbs, and then you just knock off these endings. These are the infinitive endings. You just knock them off, and that leaves you with, again, lauda. And we'll leave this little mark here to show that that's just the root. So what do you do to make this a command? Well, you get rid of that, and there it is, a command. Lauda, praise. Same thing here. Mone, advise. That's the imperative. It's pretty straightforward. You just knock off the endings. It's like English. To give a single person a command like praise, you just use the root of the verb. But if you want the plural, then you need a bit more. And that here it is. Laudate. Y'all praise, or monete. Y'all advise. We can already get some fun sentences here. All you need is the pronoun me, which is me. Lauda me, praise me, mone me. Advise me, laudate me. Y'all praise me, monete me. You all advise me. That's all the grammar for chapter 1. You can send me questions by email or just wait for the online conference session. Next video is on the vocabulary of chapter 1.